Yes. So welcome everyone back for the second session of our Western Region CRI AGM. We have Father Jerry S.J. from Chennai who will be speaking to us. And I request Father Jayasilan, Provincial of the MSFS, to present Father Jerry to us. Father Jayasilan, could you please unmute yourself?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Thank you. Very good morning, dearest participants of this Western Sierra AGM. Reverend Sister Maggie, the President, and for the Cleo, the Chief Coordinator, Reverend Sisters, Brothers, and Fathers. Today, we are immensely glad and greatly honored to welcome Reverend Father Jerry Rosario as our resource person, who is a well-known Jesuit priest, a prophet of the time, theologian, a pastor, a spiritual counselor, a writer, a social activist, a motivator, a civil lawyer, and a retreat facilitator. He is also the founder director of 4 movements: for human donations, for social pastoral animation, for Ignatian spirituality, and for political analysis and action, all rolled in one, a visionary and missionary in this modern world to create a new world. He has to his credits a BS in Rural Development Science, MA in Political Science, LLB, and PhD in Political Philosophy and Theology. He is a well-sought visiting professor in more than 45 institutions, both in India and abroad. He is an author of over 58 books in sociology, philosophy, youth and women empowerment, spirituality, and religious theologies. Among them, over 14 books have been selected as textbooks by various autonomous colleges and universities. Moreover, 7 research scholars have done MPhil and PhD studies on Father Jerry's books, and he has also lectured so far over 30 countries. Father Jerry Rosario has organized over 200 camps for donation of blood, eye, skin, bone, cold blood stem cells, organ, and body. Father Rosario stands second in India for the number of times he has given blood, 4 times a year for 40 years. His blood has been used more than 67 times to help women in childbirth. Often he jokingly says that his blood flows through the veins of many babies. Certainly a rare accolade for celibate Catholic priest and a grassroots activist. A man on move to make a new world. He gave up wearing footwear as a mark of solidarity with the Dalits and poorest who are denied the right to wear it by the caste-ridden traditions. He has spent 10 years living among the Dalits and poor people, sharing their lifestyle. He often says that with 130,000 nuns, brothers, and priests in India, India is considered the religious capital of Catholic world, and we can become the change and we can make a difference. Dear Father Jerry Rosario, today we, the members of Western CRI, are blessed to have you and overjoyed to listen to you as a resource person. Thank you, Father, for accepting our invitation to inspire us and to accompany us in the march towards creating a new horizon. Thank you for accepting the invitation and a hearty welcome, Father.
Ultimately speaking, the challenge of life is nothing but to leave the world and leave the humanity better at the time of our death compared to what we found the world, what we found the society, humanity at the time of our birth. And these are not my words, but I like to begin my presentation to you with these words, which I am borrowing from none other than Pope Francis. I repeat the words. Simple reason, this particular saying of Pope Francis sets a bold ruling for my session. Ultimately speaking, the challenge of life is nothing but to leave the humanity, leave the society at the time of our at the time of our death better than what we found the humanity and the world at the time of our birth. We should make a difference before we say bye-bye to humanity and leave this planet called the earth. That's a challenge. That's a challenge to any human person, and much more to any Christian who wants to be an authentic follower and a mature disciple of Jesus of Nazareth. And much, much more to you and to me who have consecrated our lives, who are committed our lives for the horizon of the mission of God in order to birth a new humanity that should be casteless and classless, and a new earth and new heaven. These are only introductory words, and I am told I have got about 45 minutes to go. I know that we are beginning rather late, but I will try my best to put my points across to you in brief. I have 5 points to go. After this introductory prelude, I have 5 points to go. Number 1 is nothing but this one. We may have to get back to rules. By the way, I am not referring to the Second Vatican Council, which called for all the congregations, all the religious orders, all the world institutes to go back to the roots of their own foundation. But now I am now putting something differently. Going back to the roots, not only in terms of one's own congregation, but much more in order to make our commitment quite relevant for today. We need to get back to the very origin of religious life, the so-called consecrated life, the vowed life back in the history of the Catholic Church. And you know it. You know it. And this particular origin of the consecrated life happened somewhere, as per the church historians, somewhere in the end of 4th century, beginning of 5th century. End of 4th century, in a way, beginning of the 5th century. Now look at my detail. And that's what I want to hit it as a first point. And what's that one? We need to get back to the origin. I tell you, that particular time, those who emerged as a newly committed religious groups, and they were rather movements here and there, and their sparks in their hearts, and their values of the gospel in their minds. And come what may, they were ready to swing against currents. And they were so much convinced and committed to justice, committed to freedom, committed to service and the love and service to the least and the lost. They kept that particular stamp, and then even demanded metanoia, even in terms of the church at the time. You know it historically, after the conversion of Constantine and after Christianity becoming the state religion of the Roman Empire, and certainly the church was rather getting away from that track, and the church was missing the mark, and the gospel values were compromised. And then they were ready to sacrifice even the very mission of God in order to have certain security and safety. Church in the 4th century, it is there, the so-called, the 4 fathers and 4 mothers and 4 brothers and 4 sisters of you and me, and that is so-called the religious movement started. Look at my detail. Do you know what they were known at the time? They were not known as religious, because the topic that is given to me is understanding the religious commitment today. That's my topic. And I'm coming immediately after the senior advocate, Colin Gonzalez, was placed before us all the many crises and which are now finding as a burning bushes. Chapter number 3, book of Exodus. Burning issues, burning bushes, burning demands, burning challenges before us. He placed it very, very squarely and put it very, very substantially. Now I have to take off from there. It is my first point. And do you know how the religious were known back in the 4th century, end of 4th century, when they emerged? or back at the beginning of the 5th century when they started expanding themselves, their presence. I learned, we'll take the thread where I left over. Namely, we need to get back when at the end of 4th century or the beginning of 5th century, when the religious movement came up in the church, at that time, they were not known as religious. They were not known as what we call the vowed or the consecrated people, men and women, but rather they were known as Protestants. Many times we forget this idea. I like to highlight that one. So when we now begin to understand our commitment, we need to know the first and the foremost, the fundamental and the foundational, that particular idea that we have got is that we need to protest against. And as per even at that time, 4th and 5th century, even when the church is not ready to go along with justice of God, love for the least, and got demanded by the gospel, and the so-called religious movements in that time raised their voice. Senior advocate Colin Gonsalves, when he was talking with us, he was highlighting, speak up, Isa. It is there I got this one. To begin my session, in continuation of his session, thereby to get back to the original definition that we have had, that is way back about 15, 16 centuries ago, that we need to become Protestants. In the biblical language, that is called propheticism. And Pope Francis says, propheticism is a non-negotiable element of our religious life. So we need to, when the topic is given to me, understanding the religious commitment in today, I like to invite you that we understand ourselves first. And look at my reflection. When you use the word understanding, that means we need to stand under to understand. The topic given to me is that understanding our religious commitment today. To understand, we need to stand under. They cannot understand standing above. And we need to stand under to understand. Stand under to understand. That means, to begin with, we need to stand under this particular first definition, the first idea that the consequences added 15, 16 centuries ago. Is what I said, my first point, getting back to the roots. Not only roots of our own respective foundation, but getting back to the roots of the very religious emergence in 4th, 5th century. I like to pray for all of us before I go to the second point, that we really get back to this particular original charism, which is a common charism of all the religious congregations. We all may be belonging to various congregations, and we will go by the charism of founders and founders' respective ones. But still, we cannot deny to ourselves this original charism. And that's the first and the best charism of acquiring and procuring the grace, the gift of Protestants. And thereby, I'm quoting here, Gospel according to Luke, chapter 2, verse number 34, when Prophet Simeon uttered the words over the baby Jesus being offered at the temple at Jerusalem by the parents. Simeon said, Prophet Simeon says, this is a child, not an ordinary one, a sign of contradiction. This is the reading every year on February the 2nd, when we celebrate our consecrated life, we have that one as per the lectionary, as a gospel reading. Sign of contradiction. Sign of contradiction. Not going along with the stream, but taking a stand and move on. Good. From there, I move on to the second point of my presentation. Any congregation and every congregation, any religious person, male or female, or any religious institute, all go through certain phases. And there are 4 phases. I have a lot of things to share on this one, but let me now put it rather briefly and succinctly and straightly. There are 4 phases. And what's the one? And that's first one is movemental phase. movemental phase. Every congregation, when it was founded by the respective founder or foundresses, they had certain spark, they had certain challenge, they had certain conviction, they had fire, fire. And this movemental phase. And comes the second in course of time, the institutional phase. And we get stuck, and we started getting stuck. And at that time, even the constitutions may be written, and the institutions may be put up, and then we like to go by certain expansion, and thereby we get into certain institutionalization. The first one, the movemental phase, in course of time getting into the institutional phase, but that even is okay. But the third phase, that's the one success and limits us and controls us, if not curbs us. And what is that one? Traditional phase. Traditional phase. Then we get stuck. Movemental phase, moving over to institutional phase, and the institutional phase moving over to traditional phase. This happens. I belong to one congregation, and my congregation is Society of Jesus, and that also happens also in my congregation. I cannot deny the fact. So also, all those who are listening to me, belonging to CRI of Bombay Archdiocese and the West, and also Western region, and they're listening from various that particular part of the western part of India, and whichever congregation you belong, I belong, as this particular difficulty when it gets in the third phase called institutionalization, and then moves over to the traditional phase, the congregations become rather complacent. You may be wondering, why are not now referring to these phases? I got a reason to underline. Why? Today, I like to invite you, as you have given me this particular, what you call sacred task of talking to you. I like to put it across rather straightly and strikingly. What is that one? We need to engineer. Look at my word. We need to engineer the fourth phase in our own religious communities, in our religious congregations. Unless and until the fourth phase comes up, we may talk a lot, or as a senior advocate Colin Gonsalves would, we may have a number of seminars and workshops. We may have chapter after chapter, gathering after gathering, assembly after assembly, and meeting after meeting. And we may deliberate over, discuss over, debate over, and discern over. But ultimately what we decide will be remaining on paper unless we go to the fourth phase. And this is my humble and very simple same time request to you, if not a kind of what I call upon you for to engineer the fourth phase. What is that one? The fourth phase is critical phase and contextual. You can call it critical phase, contextual phase, or historical phase. This is what the social scientists say. I'm borrowing this insight from the social scientists. They say any organization will go through these phases. First, we start with a good intention, noble intention, movemental phase, and slowly move into institutional phase, and slowly it's coming inward. Third one, tradition, makes people becoming complacent, and they may even become stagnated. But you need to engineer as a result and fruit of this particular day, so to say, in order to really push up and gear up our religious commitment, we need to engineer the fourth phase, critical phase. We need to allow the members of our institutes and also our collaborators and associates, our friends and even benefactors, and even our own families and our own brothers and sisters, dear and near ones, to really challenge us and criticize us. Only when we allow them, they will be all the more open, all the more frank, all the more enjoy the freedom to question us, and challenge us, and criticize us, and probe and investigate into anything, everything that is done under the banner of the religious commitment. And they will at times even poo-poo. They may even what they call humiliate us and humble us. But we need to have the courage. We need to have the courage to accept that humility. We need to have that courage and boldness and the dil to accept that particular humiliation. Unless and until that happens, nothing is going to happen. It is there. It is there. When I listen to the previous speaker, that is senior advocate Colin Gonsalves, I said, let me now also put it in such a way that it takes really a certain what we call gives a certain go, so to say. And that's before I go to the third point of mine, let me know some of my second point this way. I am referring to all the religious institutes, all the congregations, communities, all our ministries also our ministries. It can also applicable to individuals. That is to me, is all the four phases are also applicable to me as Jerry. Maybe also applicable to you as you're listening to me. And then when we join the institute, and when we now really go through the formation, and we come with that spark and the fire, and we come with that particular go in us, force in us, determination. But in course of time, unfortunately, all the spark and the fire, everything get evaporated. It is there the fourth one needed. We need to engineer that one in our religious communities. They need to engineer that one in our religious congregations. We need to engineer in our own members. We need to engineer in terms of our ministries. And we need to engineer in our commitments so that we take a new step. And that takes me to the third point. I move rather fast so that at the end, in case you want to have any questions, I'm at your service to give further clarifications and explanations and explorations. But anyhow, I have to now little move fast because time is running short. I should not simply take your time. There I move to point number 3. Here I'm not throwing the spotlight, our commitment. The topic, the focus given to me. But this third point, I could not come unless, now just refer to the second point, unless we are ready to criticize ourselves and unless we are ready to challenge ourselves. When we criticize ourselves and challenge ourselves, the other side of the coin is creativity. Again, this is social scientists would say, no criticism, then no creativity. No crisis, there will be no change. There is no pain, there will be no gain. In the science, they also say, no emergency, there is no discovery, including COVID, and then we are at finding a discovery of the vaccine that will put the COVID-19 to rest, so to say. No emergency, no urgency, then there is no discovery. No discovery. Or in languages, they say, no confusion, then there is no clarity. No confusion, then there is no clarity. And that's what we also say, no Good Friday, then there is no Easter Sunday. So where are we now? We need to really challenge ourselves, and that will be a painful process, and that is Good Friday. But we are ready for Good Friday. Now comes the third point. I can propose something in terms of Easter Sunday. I had a number of points, a number of what you call proposals coming under the point number 3, commitment. But I like to restrict myself just to 3 to trigger off your imagination. I know at the end of this one, you also will have your own group discussion. And Maggie this morning as president, she also said, we need to end up this day with certain action plans. So I know you will take off. Being figured off my presentation, I like to limit myself only to 3. Number one, we need to go for the new poor rest. Look at my word, new poor rest. Why CRI, way back in the year 2000, has worked out a document after having his meeting about 450 plus major superiors meeting, some just outside Chennai. I know at that time I was also one of the speakers, along with Father Joe Manhath and whatnot. But now coming to this one, at the time 2000, under the CRI, men and women all put together, CRI, concluded new poor, that is POOR. But what I'm going to say may sound rather simple, but if you take it for consideration, you will see the solid challenge embedded here. We need to stop using the word poor, whereas we need to start using the word poorest. You may say, why Jerry? Why Jerry? You may ask me, but I've got a reason. It happens in all the congregations, and we cannot deny the fact. In case that is not happening in your respective congregation, tell me, I'll be delighted to withdraw my statement. They use the word poor. And then next up question, who are the poor? And then what will happen at the end is they conclude solemnly after having 2 or 3 days of discussion and whatnot. They conclude solemnly that everyone is poor. Humbug. If only Jesus has given this particular definition, I don't think so he would have been crucified. In the time of Jesus, then Pilate also poor. Herod is poor. Pharisees are poor. Bluffing whom? And cheating whom? Betraying whom? It's not Peter or Judas. We betray ourselves. I include myself also. And when we are asked to talk on the commitment, it is not committed to any poor, Then we explain, some are spiritually poor, some are academically poor, some are sociological poor. What a nonsense. Total nonsense. Doesn't make any sense. Then we miss the mark. Miss the mark. We lose all our ground for which we have committed ourselves. And we escape. In psychology, that is called escapism. Escapism. And put on mask. We miss the mark and put on mask and saying that we are committing, etc., etc., etc. Today we need to allow our conscience to be pricked and stop using the word poor. We have to go by Jesus' language. Matthew's Gospel, chapter 25, verse number 40. Chapter number 25, Matthew's Gospel, verse number 40. And Jesus puts very, very squarely, whenever you did anything to the least, superlative, of your brothers and sisters who belong to my family, Jesus says like that. They belong to my family. Anything to the least of your brothers and sisters, and they belong to my family. In another way, he belongs to that family. Then you did it to me. Then the commitment becomes rather square. And commitment becomes rather demanding and challenging. Then we make our presence quite credible and participative, and participation in the mission of God quite creative. And much more we contribute to the mission of God in a commendable way. So when we come to commitment, I said there are 3 points. I'm hitting the first one. Stop using poor, but using new, poorest, superlative. Mother Teresa, in some other context, said it comes to my mind. Why not I say that one also? Mother Teresa said like this: to serve for the poor, we don't need to be even Christians. Simple humans quite enough. Human compassion, mercy good enough. And we could serve. Because when the tsunami comes up, when the floods come up, or when the earthquake comes up, we don't check the religion. The humanity speaks. And we extend our hand of solidarity, irrespective of any religion whatsoever. It's the way Mother Teresa said. To serve the poor, to committing oneself to the poor, one does not need to be even Christian. Any human person, any Tom, Dick, and Harry and Jerry can do. The second is poorer. Then Mother Teresa said it. That has to be done by NGOs or, okay, the general Christians as such, or any person who is religiously minded. What we say, they're people of goodwill. They do a little more. There's the second, the last one, poor, poorer, poorest. And the poorest corresponding to Jesus' word. There we need to really understand. Now anybody and everybody will come forward. We volunteer. We surrender ourselves to that particular service to the least and the last and the poorest. And let me know in this particular point, identify. There back in 2000, if I remember correctly, the CRI, that General Assembly, ended saying, as we are entering the new century, I'm talking 20 years ago, and at that time, and the CRI decided in terms of 17 target peoples, priority peoples, and the poor people, for whom we need to give a preference in our ministries, and we need to focus upon what they need to answer, respond as our commitments. But now I'm not going into those 16, but going by today's context, I like to place before you 4 suggestions. Possibly some of the suggestions that I'm giving to you for our commitment, we might have taken up in our charters, but still get confirmed, so to say, in case not done, and we also get challenged and beckoned and invited by that one. What are the 4? Number 1, certainly in the context of COVID-19, migrants. I know the western part because you are here in the western region, and you are getting enough and more of migrants from the eastern region. You step out of your convent campus or step out of the seminary and your house, and so you will see migrants up and down and coming from the eastern region of India. And they are putting their labor and they are putting their work. They are getting benefited. After the lockdown came on the 24th of March this year, announced by the government of India, and we know at least 4.5 crores of migrants that simply they were running from pillar to post without having anything to go by. Okay, we have done something, but that's only charity. That's only certain developmental services. That is a momentary. COVID-19 may go. And what happens is that we need to really launch into certain new commitment, a new ministry, creative ministry for migrant. It's not that easy. That means we may have to even prepare some of the youngsters, send them for special studies. Because when you want to put in our schools and colleges to teach chemistry, they promote them. BSc chemistry, MSc chemistry, MPhil, if not PhD in chemistry. Same way. We need to know too. So the migrants are not simply giving them some pittance, but much more to traveling with them. Demands certain scholarship. And let me immediately move to the second one. And the second one is again is a new one. Thank God, the last 6-7 years after the new Pope, that is Francis, coming into the scene, we have started talking about what they use were they were transgenders, new commitment. Way back in the 2000, the CRA did not think of. At the time, we were not very sure, and the church also was not very clear. But we are living in a privileged moment now. The new poorest who are pushed to the periphery, both in sociologically and also geographically, and they stand in need of our solidarity. Transgenders, and I suppose you know, and certainly you will be knowing, that is 83% of transgenders are though born with male organs, sexual organs, but they psychologically, they are in terms of the other sex, that is women. That means 83%. And this cannot be done in male congregations. Again, it needs certain special preparation and special orientation. And so that upcoming generation of a respective congregation may be prepared and ready for this creative ministry. Up to now, we would have said empowerment of women. Okay, empowerment of men, whatever you want to call it. But now it has said empowerment of the transgenders. Opening up our hearts and minds, opening our doors and windows, and opening up new ministries and services. And that is a new commitment. And they are new poorest. The third one is traffic to people. Traffic to people. And especially, again, girls, they also boys, but girls, and especially for the sexual exploitation. Again, my dear friends who are listening to me, you cannot deny the fact that again the western region of our country of India is receiving number of people, even from northeast, and which is rather Christian, if not Catholic. Credit goes to the Salesian fathers and sisters who have done the mission over there. And they are coming out, and they are moving. I find them also in Chennai, but not in big number, but they are all. And they are Catholics, human trafficked, boys and girls, and especially girls. And where are we in the context? We need to criticize. Then we need to create a new service pattern. We cannot be like passers-by in the parable of Good Samaritan, about which Pope Francis writes a full chapter number 2 in the latest encyclical, Fratelli Tutti, second chapter. He says in that particular one, Pope Francis says, all the characters of Good Samaritan are being found in each and every one of them. He puts, sometimes we are Good Samaritan, sometimes we are robber, sometimes we are wounded, and many a time we are passers-by. Like the Levite passed by, and they are passers-by. In this one, last one, commitment to the new poorest, last one, especially after 18th of June 2015, after the encyclical Laudato Si, and we need to go in for what they use the word green ministries. I tell you, number of our congregations are taken the common. In their chapters, they are discussed and they are deliberated, and also they are discerned and decided. But what I want to underline is this one. This particular decision by our respective chapters of provincial or general should not just remain on paper. To use the paper, even for our chapters, and thereby to talk about ecology, should not become a kind of a counter-production, counter-effect. It should not become almost like we are going against ourselves. Whereas we use the paper, we use the time, but we really also inaugurate and initiate certain green ministries in small way, at least, in our given locations. Here again, I like to refer to social scientists and who say this one. We need to think big. Cosmos creation is a big issue. We have to think big. And look at the next sentence. We have to do big. But look at the next one. Think big, do big in your given small place. In your small place. Earlier we used to say, they think big, do big in big way. No. That is not going to happen. But this will happen. And as Sister Maggie put it at the outset, we need to think of an action plan for 1 year. Let us see whether we can take this green ministry in a small way in all of our campuses or surrounding our campuses. We don't need to take up the work of the corporations and municipalities, but do our own bit and add our drop. And what we do may be rather small but significant. Why not? Why not? Why not? I conclude my third point on this one. I gave what we call it, the 4 new poorest. Why not our commitments and go in terms of them? Good, I go to the 4th one. My point, I said 5 points. I'm coming to the 4th one. I'm moving ahead, and at the end, in case you ask me or much more, if there is a time, I will also add whatever I am just bypassing because of the time factor. The 4th one is this one. I got 2 things to say here, and especially when you, I understand that you're all major superiors. That's what I understand. As a because the very fact that you are negotiating with the Bishops' Conference, the Western region, and then you are, I'm told 13 dioceses where you are working, that means you are all major superiors. Okay, there is something is there. And they are now talking to you directly if that matters for you. What are they? I said 2. One is, I hesitate, but let me now put it. Suspend. I say suspend. Suspend. For a while, stop adding upon increasing comforts in our religious life. You say next 1 year, no more comforts. Why? The current coronavirus has taught us some lessons. One of the lessons is this one. We can minimize our needs. We can live with minimum. Ordinations are taking place with just about 20 people. Marriages are taking place with 20, if not 50 people. No banquets, no reception, no magats, no big mandapams. Final professions are taking place with just about a handful of people present. Jubilees are being celebrated with a again handful of people. And our vows, profession, same story. This is one of the lessons. Unfortunate. Down the years, we got used to certain comfortable, convenient, luxurious, goody way of celebrations. And in the process, we also increased our comforts, our conveniences. In a way, they have become antithesis to the gospel values. They have become antithesis to the very profession that we take and ordination that we receive. I tell you, I'm not only talking to you, I'm also talking to me. In English, there's a saying, when you talk louder, so that at least you will hear your voice. As Jerry, I'm now talking to myself. And if you now listen to your own inner voice, possibly, you may be even listening to more than what Jerry is communicating. And we cannot talk about commitment in full sense. Then we are not taking poorest in the full sense. I said it already. And we may not really say we are really emptying ourselves. In the words of Jesus, denying ourselves. Going with the theology of the church in terms of consecrated life, we are sacrificing ourselves. What? Unless and until something happens to us. This we may not be able to take the stand immediately, but at least habit as an action orientation. I'm using a different word. Need not be an action plan, action orientation. So that when you get back, pass on this orientation, pass on this motivation, pass on whether it means anything, whether we can declare a year as a result and fruit of one of the lessons of one of the lessons of COVID-19. Last 8 months, everything is done in a minimized way. And why not we carry on? It will add beauty to our profession, beauty to our ordination, and beauty to our very life as persons belonging to religious institutes, as consecrated persons of today. The very way of doing that itself may be a gospel. It's a good news. We do so that they also come to know things are possible like this. even in a globalized, privatized, liberalized, and digitalized world of today. We got into that particular one. And we talk about globalization. We also enjoying the benefits of globalization and much more giving an expression, if not an exhibition. It's not an exhibition, which goes against our own vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. Scandals need not be any other. Even in this particular respect, we need to stop the nonsense. Good. I know I am talking more than what I have prepared. That means it is not only Jerry talking, though Jerry talking to himself, but the Spirit is talking. I prepared quite seriously and sincerely last night, this morning. And now I know I am talking. I'm voicing something coming from within. And I suppose you take me as your brother. And if what I'm saying is nonsense, set it aside. If that makes any sense, why not? I said two, number one. The second one is, I said as the major superiors, you can also think of this one. First one is suspend the increase or increasing the comforts, conveniences in our lives, community-wise and whatnot. Good. The second one, because that is by that one, we are going to get something to be shared with the neediest. And there I would like to recollect what CRA decided some time back. If I remember correctly, that was early 1990s, solid 30 years ago. I kept track of some of the documents of CRA. And I think I am a member of the CRA, but I am no official of the CRA. But I will not be a major superior whatsoever. But coming to that one, I kept track of. If I remember correctly, it was 1990 or 1991. At that time, CRA decided this way. National CRA decided this way. That means your and my major superiors decided this way. What is that one? Namely, we need to budget all our resources, including human resources in one's own congregation. What are they? And what does it mean? What does it mean? 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. 1/3. Okay, let them in the institutional ministries. 1/3, another 33%. They may be in formation, or they may be sick leave, they may be going through certain treatment, or they may be taking sabbatical, whatnot. 1/3. 1/3. And what happens to the other 1/3? That's a 1/3. They should be in the grassroots. And they should be committing for the very purpose for which all our congregations were founded by our own respective founders and foundresses. I don't think so any founders of any congregation founded for the richest. I don't think so any founders, any constitution was founded for the powerful, the bourgeois. And our institute, anyhow, we need to be realistic. It's there. I like that wise decision made by our CRA about 3 decades ago. Now, about 3 decades ago. 1/3, okay, carry on your institutions. You may not be able to close, but budget. Another 1/3, say 33%. See that they are being assigned for grassroots ministries, whether green ministries, as I said earlier, ministries for transgenders or ministries for LGBTQ or anybody who stand in need of migrants, etc., etc. 1/3. Then there is a reason, rationale for our existence. Otherwise, in the words of Pope Francis, they become another NGO. They forget the very grammar of the religious institute. They become an NGO. Okay, going by the government regulation, we register our society for various purposes. I am not denying that fact. But after that, we should know, we are not like any other NGO. We are ROs, religious organizations. That means we need to budget. human resources. Look at the way we budget financial resources. It is there, the first one I said it. When we now really suspend increasing comforts and conveniences, and we will have certain financial resources, and that we need to put in for the ministries of the grassroots. Why many times we say, and that the grassroots ministries are not self-sufficient. For self-sufficient, it can be taught by Ambani, Mukesh Ambani. Can be taught by Tata, Ratan Tata. It can be taught by Amitabh Bachchan, Abhishek Bachchan. But should not be taught by you and me. It is there, it's not self-sufficient. We need to budget and give. And another one that says too, we need to take care of them in case they are going through medical treatments, in case they are passing through sabbatical programs, ongoing programs, or much more in the very formation programs. These are the two I give it. Now I move to my fifth point, the last point. With that I will end it. And the fifth point is, here I take the clue from Pope Francis, and then I am putting it my own way. Pope Francis, 2 years ago, 2018, on the Mission Sunday, when he gave their mission statement or declaration and exhortation, he put one sentence which I cannot but remember all the time. He says, when we talk about mission, commitment, mission, we only think of others. And the other thing are here and there, are going here and there and doing this and that. Then he comes to that particular point. Mission is not just outside. It's true outside, not just outside. Mission is also inside. Look at the way he has coined the sentence. I am a mission. I am a mission. Now put it in our own context. I am a commitment. I am a mission. And this particular one will not come automatically, will come only animatedly. And we need to really take this one into certain consideration and promote people in our own respective institutes who really want to live by this one. They cannot go here and there, do this and that. But in case they want to be a different person, and thereby living out a life of honesty, simplicity, we need to really appreciate and applaud them. Because all of us are supposed to be, but that's not the case. Then we need to have the sense of realism. At least to really spot out those persons, and we need to really promote them. And much more in our formation years, right from the aspirancy or postulancy, candidacy, novitiate, whatnot, right from the initial formation, we need to have this particular concept. I am a mission. I am a commitment. And each one should say, yes, I can. Only if they say, better we give them that particular invitation to make the profession. And if they are not ready, nothing wrong. Why? We need to look forward to quality members of our institutes rather than quantity members of our institutes. Why? That alone will give life to our religious commitment, religious life. I like to end my session with the words with which I began the session. I began quoting Pope Francis, taken from Joy of the Gospel, but I put in my own way. He talks in a full paragraph, but I put it in my own way. Ultimately speaking, the challenge of life is nothing but to leave the world, leave the humanity, that is, leave the cosmos better, brighter than what we found them, humanity or the world or the cosmos at large. Better compared to what we found them at the time of our birth. We should have rendered a certain difference between our birth and death. May God bless you and bless me and bless us so that these thoughts will trigger off further discussion and deliberations from us. And what I've given is only kind of initial thoughts, so to say. As I said, because of the time, I shortened my presentation in terms of various points, but still I have given you something. I wish you all the best. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Father Jerry. We are very glad to listen to you in two parts. And although your current went off in the middle, your talk was very dynamic and inspired all of us. We leave the floor open now to those of you who would like to put your questions to Father Jerry.
Hi, Jerry. The question I want to
Yes.
put to you is that just now there is a lot of atrocities happening across the country towards Dalits. And we see that the caste system is also prevalent in the Catholic Church. How do we, change that? And so as to be in solidarity with the Dalits, you have done a lot of work with the Dalits. Can you guide us in this? And how do we go about this so that we are countercurrent to what the present government is doing with regard to atrocities against the Dalits?
Thank you so much, Vinitha, for giving me this particular question. And I'm going to put it rather shortly to your question. Any elaboration you can ask. What is that one? Casteism is there in the society, in the church, and you put it exactly. But there's one way of going against, and that is this one. Namely, to go to the least and the last, even in the caste structure. Go to the least and the last. And they're not only Dalits, but today they use the word, not only Dalits, but Dalits of Dalits. Why? As per the government of India, the SC list, that's a Dalit list, has got 283 communities across the nation. And out of which each state has got it. So the suggestion will be like this. Namely, get the list of your respective state, SC list. For example, Tamil Nadu. Out of 283 communities around the world, around the country, 87 Dalit communities are in the state of Tamil Nadu today. And imagine a ladder and put all the 87 steps. And there are some people who are at the lowest ones. And even in the Dalits, some have come up. They are becoming in a way top class. And there are some Dalits in the middle class. But as a religious, as a consecrated, and we need to go for the least, even among the Dalits of Dalits, women of women, workers of workers, even Adivasis of Adivasis. Today, that's the way they say it. As a simple Dalits, Adivasis, women or workers may sound, what we call it, fantastic, but they are not sharp enough. And we need to sharpen the sword, as a Stephen Covey would say it. And we need to go. It is their workers. We go for migrant workers. Good. Let me now put it this way and end this particular response. What is that one? There's no time here, but I can tell you some of the women's congregation, some of the men's congregation in this particular part of the country, that is Tamil Nadu, about which I can talk. They are taken clear stand in terms of Arundhadiyars, one of the lowest ones, even among the Dalits. They are Dalits of Dalits. Or those who are what we call it Dobis, but they are being treated shabbily even within the Dalit community. And accordingly, they are moved ahead. Thank you so much, Sister Vanitha, for giving this particular question. Gives me an opportunity to sharpen what I said earlier, so that in our own given localities, stop going by the common, what we call it, Dalits, workers, tribals, or Adivasis, and what women in generic term. Better to go for specific term. And specificity gives a certain sharpness in our commitment. Thank you so much.
Father Jerry, can I ask a question?
Welcome.
Yeah. Father, you mentioned about the category of transgenders. I suppose you also mean the LGBTQ, or do you have any reservations to the whole big term of LGBTQ?
Oh no, I thought I also mentioned it. I mentioned it because as a given time, everything cannot be mentioned. But here, even in terms of transgenders, Also, in terms of what you now say, I can put them together and give this suggestion. What is that one? It's only my suggestion. Possibly you may be doing it because, as I said earlier, for this creative and special ministries, we need some special formation. However, we know across the nation, number of groups are today working in small way, but still they are working. And why not? As a religious communities of the western region of India, you also think of this one as one of the action plan. What is that one? Namely, at least a network with those who are already ministering to transgenders or LGBTQ. We don't need to start a new ministry. If there is possibility, why not? If there's no possibility, we'll not sit back. At least we extend hand of networking so that their services can be enhanced. And thereby, the special types of people who stand in need of our succor and support and solidarity at this particular time could be done. Good. Thank you so much, Anita.
Thank you, Father. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Father Jerry,
Yes, welcome.
you spoke about critical ways, but
Yes.
there are exceptions. But in general, among us religious, we do not think critically. That's my experience. I may be wrong. So, can you suggest some concrete ways that
Good.
we grow in critical thinking?
Thank you so much, Maggie. I know you are the president. I salute you. At the same time, I have to answer your question. Here, I am going to refer to a very contemporary example. And our advocate, namely Colin Consalvo, also referred to. And I know he is in Mumbai, that is Father Stan Swami. Now, taking, I gave about 3 or 4 public talks on him in the last fortnight in various places. When you coming to them, I highlighted this way. I said that Stan Swami was my professor. When I was a student of theology, at the time he was director of the Indian Social Institute, Bangalore, and he taught me societal analysis, social analysis for 5 days. He was not a very powerful talker or speaker. A bit of monotonous way of communicating, but his points were rather sharp. What I am today also contributed. And when I started working among Dalits, Father Stan Swami came to my parish, my area, village, remote area, and stayed with me for 5 days. But then I understood, Father Stan Swami, as you said about critical, is not only critical about the governments outside. What I'm going to say, and it may be even surprising you, if not stunning you. What is the point? He's even critical about the Society of Jesus, Jesuit order. He has written articles. He belongs to that particular group. And very great of the Jesuit order. And they even published his articles, write-ups, even in the national Jesuit magazine called Jeevan. I give one example. He questioned and all the business institutes being run by the nation. He says that is not our ministry, and you are not preparing what we call you are preparing people for managers. Whereas you need to come to the grassroots. Or he also wrote articles against what they use the word today in the colleges and universities, campus recruitment. He said they study there, don't bring others. And then at the end of the studies, they catch the flight and go abroad. They escape the reality. They are not lifting their finger for the society. And the campus recruitment in our institutions should be stopped. One of the articles, Stan Swami said it. I tell you, not all the institutions will accept this one, but somebody has raised these critical observations and then given expression to that one, so that at least few, if not some, will follow suit in course of time, and there's a revolutionary way of proceeding, and that's the way the history tells us things start happening. In small way, it begins, but it acquires momentum in course of time that brings forth certain revolutionary changes and whatnot. Thank you so much, Maggie, for asking this question. I put it this way, namely, as you said, it's not only being critical. There are examples. as I quoted by Stan Swami himself. And we need to really pick up that inspiration and see whether that could be consciously
We'll take one last
engineer, consciously engineer, and thereby people will really come up with certain prophetic touch of the religious life, even within our communities and in our provinces and whatnot.
We'll take one last question before we conclude this session.
Good. And I saw that one question coming up there.
There is one observation, Father, that you could please use the term LGBTQ rather than saying only transgenders.
That came earlier while I was giving talks. I think I referred twice now. Any other question would have been much better, but somebody put it, whether this is the coronavirus is coming up, any lessons that we can get it for our life. There is one question came up here. Anyway, I will take that one and end the session. And when I now survey, I look at the context. Out of the 193 countries in the world, 187 as per World Health Organization got affected with this pandemic. And the World Health Organization says, and we may find vaccines, but this virus is not going away and will stay with us. At that time, it may become epidemic or endemic rather than being pandemic. Now look at this one. Namely, by this particular context, the Lord of, I use the word God of COVID or God of shocks. He has given some lessons. I just indicate two and conclude my response. Number one, already I said it. This particular COVID has given us how to live with a touch of simplicity. You would have taken the vow of poverty, but they live in prosperity. And whereas the COVID has given us a lesson how we can live a life of simplicity. In any sense, in every sense. Good, first lesson. Second lesson, namely, how we need to really extend our solidarity, born out of certain sensitivity to the unknown faces. Because earlier we talked about, as we talked during this session about Dalits, women, these are known faces. Adivasis, known faces. Unknown faces are there. For example, daily wage workers or people who were living on pension and abandoned seniors, even abandoned by their own, what we call abandoned by their own children. And these are unknown faces. And we can go. Or there was a write-up in Chennai Times of India, and that is, they were referring to what we call CSW, the commercial sex workers. Commercial sex workers, with all the social distance. And the write-up said, one of the people who got affected, also so-called commercial sex workers. We would have, at the time, earlier, looking at them, we would have said that how come they have got into flesh trade. And we would have even looked down upon them. But today we need to understand, stand under them. In what way? Namely, they lost their trade. And COVID has made them unknown faces, uncared for. Good. This is the second lesson, that we need to keep our eyes open to come across and observe and encounter the unknown faces, not only during the COVID time, the coronavirus time, this critical time, but even after this time. And that should become our new form. With these words, I thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to stand before you and to talk the last 1 hour or so. And we started late, and about 10 minutes went because of the disturbance. But thank God, none of you disappeared. Thank God that you have in your presence still. Thank God you allowed me to speak to you. Thank God that you also participated. I pray for you all. You pray for me and bless me. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Father Jerry. I'd like to request Sister Pratibha to express our gratitude on behalf of the whole Western region.
Thank you, Father Jerry, for moving us out of our comfort zone during the session, taking us back to our roots. And as you took us back to our roots, you challenged us there and asked us to be Protestants and gave us the value of being propheticism. And then as you explained the 4 phases, which most of us, I suppose, are used to, what struck me the most was the last phase, that is the critical phase. And you said, no criticism, no creativity. But what really challenges us, that you use the word engineer. We have to engineer this phase. We can't expect it to happen automatically. So thank you for challenging us in different ways during the session. I was really enlightened with your third point of the poorest of the poor. Many of us are committed to the poor, have given most of our life to the poor. But these groups, the new groups and the unknown faces that you brought before us, especially in this time of the pandemic, you contextualized your whole presentation, bringing us down to brass tacks, helping us to see how we can face this pandemic in a creative way and how we have to be prophets during this time. It goes right back to our formation, how we are going to plan our formation, how we are going to budget our personnel, how we are going to be realistic, not only go all out for the poor, but that you said 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. I think it gives us some hope. And again, in the context of the pandemic, during this last part of the session, you told us how we can face this pandemic by suspending our comforts. How the pandemic has taught us how to be simple. I want to thank you also for giving us your parting shot. I am mission, I am commitment. So it's not only the congregation that has to take responsibility, but that each one of us. Thank you for quoting Francis from time to time. Maybe all of us can take this to heart, what that Francis said, that when we leave this world, let us leave it a better place than what we found. And today, when we celebrate the victory of the election in America, and we celebrate the hope that Bihar brings, we also want to enkindle this hope that you have given us, that it is possible. And if it's not possible for each congregation to start the work for the LGBT, not possible for each congregation to start out our new areas, it will be our hope will be in networking. That we can network, and even if we give one sister towards each of these ministries, that will be a step forward. So thank you very much on behalf of the Western Region CRI. I'd like to offer you our heartfelt gratitude and hope we will hear you and see you again. Thank you.
Thank you for your thank you. I also wish you all the best in the deliberations to follow. Thank you once again. Bye, bye, bye.
Thanks, Father Jerry. We can give him a big round of applause.
Good. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Father. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.